Chapter 442. Hearing this, Shixiao and Xiongji completely understood that these foreigners treated them as a form of entertainment, like a game between a cat and a mouse. What if we recognize it? Shixiao asked again. Recognize it? The bald man was taken aback. It was obvious that he had not considered this question. Oh, if you recognize it, then I'll let you live a little longer. Then, you can continue to recognize it. I think there will always be guns that you can't recognize. Ha ha ha. The bald man was proud. At that moment, Shixiao and Xiongji suppressed the anger in their hearts. If they did not cooperate, they might die immediately. No matter what, they had to buy time. However, when Xiongji and Shixiao opened the box, they were completely dumbfounded. They could not name the firearms in the box, or rather, they had never seen them before. Shixiao was at a loss. What? You can't recognize it? Ha ha ha, if that's the case, we have to abide by the rules of the game. We can only kill one of them first. The bald man raised his arm, and the black muzzle in his hand landed on Xiongji. Then, he moved it away and aimed it at Shixiao. This repeated over and over again. However, at that moment, an extremely abrupt voice rang out in the armory. Let me. Ningxi walked up to the side of the box. Seeing Ningxi, the foreigners were stunned. They did not even notice Ningxi's existence earlier. No one knew how she suddenly appeared here. Not only the foreigners, but even Xiongji and Shixiao were dumbfounded. This woman, when did she come in? You. After Shixiao regained his senses, he looked at Ningxi from head to toe. He could no longer suppress his anger and shouted, "Who allowed you to come?" However, no matter how loud Shixiao's voice was, Ningxi ignored him. Her eyes were focused on the guns. Xiongji, what's wrong with this woman? Why did you bring this kind of actress here at this time? Is there something wrong with your brain? Shixiao was practically shouting. Xiongji was also confused. He did not know that Ningxi was here. Does she think this is an act? Damn it. Tell me, does she think this is an act? Shixiao's face was gloomy. I don't know. She followed us secretly. Xiongji could only explain. Bastard. Shixiao cursed out loud. Then, he looked at Ningxi fiercely. You're just an actress. What do you know? Get lost. Do you want to die? Suddenly, Ningxi turned around, her ice-cold eyes falling on Shixiao. Ha 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 ha, internal strife? Interesting, I like it. Let's continue. The bald brute's face was filled with excitement. How pitiful. It's fear that made them lose their rationality, the foreign woman said coldly. She doesn't count, I do. At this point, Shixiao could only brace himself. How could he leave their lives in the hands of this brainless actress? She might really think that they were acting. The bald man immediately shook his head. No, no. Since she wants to admit it, then she has to admit it. Changing people means giving up. I still want to kill one person. Shixiao's face was ashen when he heard this, and his gaze became even more ferocious as he looked at Ningxi. He wished for nothing more than to slice this idiot into 1,000 pieces in order to vent the hatred in his heart. He could not understand at all. Lu Tingxiao was so wise that he was willing to sacrifice his life to follow his boss. Why would he value such a brainless actress? Hearing this, Ningxi didn't even look at Shixiao. She casually took out an incomparably exquisite pistol from the box. Austrian Glock 17 pistol, used by the Austrian military. Its length is 185 mm, and its weight is about 0.6 kilograms. If I remember correctly, the barrel length should be 114 mm. The magazine holds 17 rounds, and its range is 72 meters. Chapter 443. Not only Shixiao, but even Xiongji and the man Shixiao brought with her were all pale. To put it nicely, she was an actress, but to put it bluntly, she was just a third-rate actress. How could she understand these things? What a joke. Where did the stench come from? You want to kill us? You're an actress, right? Why didn't you accompany the director and producer to deal with the unspoken rules? Instead, you came here to spout nonsense. Do you think this is acting? The man Shixiao brought was furious. He wanted to kill Ningxi. However, Ningxi acted as if she did not hear him. She played with the pistol and said to herself, "How dare you take out this kind of pistol? Most of the FBI in America uses it." After that, Ningxi threw the Austrian Glock 17 pistol aside without any interest. They did not know much about this kind of small pistol. If it was a more lethal and penetrating weapon, Shixiao, Xiongji, and the rest would be familiar with it. Although Ningxi spoke methodically, Shixiao did not believe her at all. In his eyes, Ningxi was only an entertainer who did not know much about the military fire, so how could she know anything about it? How is it? Am I right? Just as Shixiao, Xiongji, and the rest were feeling uneasy, Ningxi looked at the bald man in the distance. At that moment, the bald man's mouth twitched. The woman's words were accurate. She even detailed the characteristics, advantages, and disadvantages of the Austrian Glock 17 pistol. It seemed that she had come into contact with similar guns before. Ha 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 ha, at least there's a smart woman. All right, continue. Our game has just begun. The bald man laughed loudly. Hearing the bald man's words, Xiongji, Shixiao, and the rest were slightly stunned. They did not understand the situation. From what the foreign mafia said, the actress was right. Damn. That was close. The man that Shixiao had brought along was sweating profusely. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and came to a sudden realization. Oh right, since she's an actress, she might have acted in a shooting scene before. It must be because of the need of the plot that she came into contact with that Austrian pistol before. Shixiao and Xiongji were deep in thought. The man's words did make sense. After all, Ningxi was an actress, and it was inevitable that she would come into contact with some shooting scenes. Perhaps it was because she had come into contact with the Austrian Glock 17 model, and because the plot required her to have some knowledge of this type of gun, that she was able to say it accurately. That was close. Xiongji took a deep breath. If Ningxi had said one wrong word, the consequences would have been unimaginable. We request a substitution, Shixiao suddenly said. Ningxi must have been lucky to recognize the Austrian Glock this time. If they continued to play, they might all die here. Yes, yes, yes. Substitute, we must substitute. The man Shixiao brought along also chimed in. It was better for them to be the one to identify the person than a third-rate actor. Even if the person identified the person wrongly, it was up to them to decide their own fate. There was no need to put their head in the hands of an actor. No, no, no. If you substitute, you'll forfeit. Are you sure? If so, I'm going to start killing the pig. The corners of the bald man's mouth curled upwards, revealing a trace of mockery. His face was filled with a playful expression. This was a game between a cat and a mouse. When he was tired of it, everyone would still die under the black muzzle of his gun. Chapter 444. In this game, he was the leader. Everything was up to him. The man Shixiao had brought with him glared at Ningxi and said fiercely, "If we can leave this place alive, I will definitely skin you alive after we get out of here. Ha ha ha, I love watching you stupid pigs fight amongst yourselves. However, whether or not we can leave this place alive is not up to you stupid pigs. Alright, if you don't want to die, then continue to admit your mistakes." The bald man sneered. Shixiao and Xiongji clenched their fists tightly. However, there was nothing they could do given the current situation. They could only pray that reinforcements would arrive soon. If their boss Lu Tingxiao didn't know anything about this, then they would all die here. Ningxi's expression was calm. She didn't seem to be affected by Shixiao and the bald man. Her gaze swept across the box and she picked up a gun. You guys also have such an ancient gun. It seems like you've put in a lot of effort for this game, Ningxi said calmly. The bald man didn't say anything. An inexplicable smile hung on his face as he stared at Ningxi with his golden eyes. You can recognize this gun even if you don't believe me. The woman in front of the bald man, Alice, said coldly. Ningxi suddenly raised her head and her eyes fell on the foreign woman, Alice. I really don't recognize this gun. Hearing this, Shixiao and Xiongji felt a chill in their hearts even though they had already expected this outcome. You stinky bastard, I'll kill you. The man Shi Xiao had brought with him had completely lost his mind. He thought that he would be killed by the performer in front of him. Everything was because of this performer. Bang! Just as the man Shi Xiao had brought with him was about to pounce on Ningxi, the bald man's gun suddenly emitted a dazzling flash. Immediately after, a bullet pierced through the ground in front of the man. Gravel flew everywhere. The sound of the gunshot was like a sudden clap of thunder, shocking everyone. It's not up to you to decide whether you live or die. Whoever I want to die will die first. Are you trying to break the rules of my game? Stupid pig. The bald man smiled evilly as he stared at the man Shi Xiao had brought with him. At that moment, the man finally regained his senses amidst the gunshots. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. He immediately shook his head and retreated, not daring to say another word. Ha ha ha, I love obedient stupid pigs the most. Seeing the man's expression, the bald strong man nodded with satisfaction and then looked at Ningxi. Since you can't recognize it, then we can only play according to the rules of the game, ha 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 ha. However, Ningxi shook her head. There's no need to rush to a conclusion. The bald man was puzzled. Although I've never seen this type of gun before, it's not hard to guess based on the caliber and feel of this gun, as well as its unique appearance. Ningxi didn't mind. Guess. At this moment, not only Shi Xiao and Xiongji, even the foreigners were stunned. This woman actually guessed it. Was she really not afraid of death? Ningxi looked at the pocket-sized gun in her hand. She weighed it in her hand and said unhurriedly, about 1 kilogram, the length should be about 180 millimeters, and the carbon steel impact sleeve has been specially modified using a special metal material. The caliber is around 0.46 inches, about 12 millimeters. The special caliber can only use 0.45-inch Smith & Wesson bullets. Chapter 445. This type of pistol can only hold 12 bullets in the magazine. It belongs to the early first generation. Although I have not touched it before, it is very easy to guess it is an antique. I am sure that this is the P229 that SIG bought in Germany in 1991. Its full name is the German P229 pistol, Ningxi said casually. After saying that, she threw the gun in her hands to the side. Shi Xiao, Xiongji, and the rest had lost all hope. They could only resign themselves to fate. They prayed that Ningxi had come into contact with similar guns when she was acting. She would be as lucky as before. Naturally, they were already prepared for a life-and-death struggle in their hearts. If worse comes to worst, they would fight with those foreigners and kill as many as they could. Anyway, they had no way to survive. How is it? Am I right or wrong? Ningxi looked at the silent bald man expressionlessly. After a long while, the bald man said coldly, I heard from them that you're an actor. That's right. Ningxi did not deny it. Regardless of what happened in the past, she was an actor now. She was a down-to-earth actor. She relied on her own talent and hard work to achieve her goals. No wonder. You're an actor. You must have acted in many gun battles. That's why you recognize these guns. Come to think of it, it's not surprising. The bald man was reasonable. Actors are really useless. You can only rely on selling your body to make those disgusting deals. Killing a disgusting pig like you with my bare hands is the most satisfying way to do it. The foreign woman, Alice, glanced at Ningxi with her sharp eyes. Alice had an instinctive disgust for actors. Hey, my dear Alice, I seem to be tired of playing this game. Why don't we change to something else? Tell me, what's more interesting than recognizing guns? The bald, brawny man looked at Alice and gave her an extremely ambiguous look. Don't you like watching them fight among themselves? Let them kill each other. That's more interesting and fun, the foreign lady, Alice, said after some thought. You've reminded me of something. The bald man stood up with a smile on his face as he stared at the man Shi Xiao had brought with him. Stupid pig, didn't you want to kill that woman just now? Now that the opportunity has come, go strangle her to death and I'll consider giving you a chance to live. How about it? Such a precious opportunity doesn't come often. Hearing the bald robust man's words, the expression of the white-clothed man that Shi Xiao brought over immediately shook, and he said in shock, You. What you said is the truth. If it's true. Before the white-clothed man could finish, the bald man laughed and said, "Of course. Buddy, you should know that I'm a person who pays attention to the rules of the game. As long as you follow my rules, you'll have a chance to live." "All right. It's a deal." The white-robed man's eyes flashed with a hint of viciousness. As long as he could live, anything was negotiable. She was just an entertainer. Killing her was no different from crushing a grasshopper to death. "Don't you dare!" Xiongji roared like an enraged beast. No matter what, Lu Tingxiao had ordered him to protect the actress. "Stupid pig, don't act rashly. Watch the show obediently, or else I'll blow your head off." A foreign man pointed a gun at Xiongji. Xiongji had a feeling that if he dared to move, the bullet would pierce through his forehead in the next second. Chapter 446. Xiongji clenched his fists and his veins popped. Boss Lu Tingxiao's orders. If he couldn't complete them, even if he survived, how could he face Boss Lu Tingxiao in the future? Be good and don't act rashly. It's not your turn to die yet. However, if you don't listen and don't cooperate, then it'll be hard to say. You idiots, we have a lot of time. The game has just begun. Ha 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 ha. The bald, brawny man looked as if he had the upper hand over them. "Shixiao, that's the person you brought. Boss said to protect Miss Ning's safety. Even if you don't do anything, you can't allow your subordinates to act recklessly." Xiongji ignored the bald, brawny man and shouted at Shixiao. Shixiao frowned. Although he didn't like that stupid woman, he didn't want her dead. "Don't attack." Shixiao looked at the man in white and shouted. "Damn it." The man in white had a fierce look in his eyes and spat on the ground. "Don't bother me. Boss Shixiao, it was you who brought us to this armory and said that boss was here. Take a look yourself and see what's here. It's an ambush. I'm going to lose my life soon. She's just a bullshit actress. Her death can be exchanged for my life. That's her honor." At this moment, forget about letting the man in white kill Ningxi. As long as he could live, he would kill Xiongji or even Shixiao without hesitation. There's no need to rush. You have your rules and I have mine. Ningxi's lips curled into a mysterious smile and she took out a pistol from the box. "Idiot, you're asking for it. The rules have changed. You're not allowed to touch any guns now. Put them down immediately." The foreign woman, Alice, stood up immediately. "Dear Alice, those guns have no bullets and the magazines are empty. Don't worry." The bald, brawny man laughed. Everything was under his control. Since the bald man didn't care, Alice shrugged her shoulders and sat back down. "Did you know? This is the Italian Boletta 92F pistol used by the US military." Ningxi opened the empty magazine and said softly, "That's right, it is indeed Italy's Boletta. But so what? The game is over. So, whether you recognize it or not, the result will be the same. You will be killed by your own people." Ha ha ha, just thinking about it makes me extremely excited. I want to see you stupid pigs kill each other. How beautiful that would be. The bald man's expression was close to that of a lunatic. Ningxi shook her head. The biggest feature of this pistol is that most of the bullets from small pistols. Before Ningxi finished speaking, the man in white rushed towards her like a gust of wind. "Stinky, go to hell." The white-robed man roared madly. "They can all be used." Ningxi murmured to herself. At the same time, she leaped into the air, and under everyone's shocked and incredulous gazes, her knee slammed into the white-robed man's abdomen. "Whoa!" The white-robed man's face spasmed and the corners of his mouth twitched. He opened his mouth and spat out a viscous liquid. After being hit by Ningxi's knee, he staggered backward. However, as the white-robed man retreated, his right shoulder was grabbed by Ningxi, whose face was as cold as an iceberg. Boom! The white-robed man didn't even know what happened before he was slammed onto the ground by Ningxi. At the same time, Ningxi had a few more bullets in her hand. With lightning speed, she loaded them into the magazine that she had been holding in her hand. Chapter 447. Ah! The man in the white shirt held his head and wailed. Ningxi's terrifying fighting skills were far beyond his expectations. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. Kill that actress? What a joke. She had such a beautiful face, but she had such terrifying skills. Why? At that moment, Ningxi had already loaded the Italian Boletta 92F pistol and loaded it with 7 bullets. Before this, Ningxi had already discovered that the gun magazines were all empty. Those foreigners naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to load the magazines with bullets. So, when she recognized the first gun, Ningxi was already thinking of countermeasures. The first time she recognized the gun was to buy time. The second time she recognized the gun was to make the foreigners lower their guard. As for the third time, Ningxi had already thought of a countermeasure. The man in the white shirt's jacket pocket had a bulge, and the bulge was the shape of the bullet. Ningxi couldn't be wrong about all kinds of bullet shapes. Moreover, in a place like Philadelphia, it was a common habit for people to carry a few spare bullets with them after their pistols were fully loaded. Most of them were kept in their jacket pockets for emergencies. At first, Ningxi realized that those foreigners were too arrogant. They didn't disarm the man in the white shirt. It seemed like they thought that everything was under their control. Ningxi wanted to take advantage of the foreigner's arrogance and directly snatch the gun from the man in the white shirt. However, she gave up on that idea in the end. The gun carried by the man in white was a self-made gun. Ningxi didn't know anything about its range, penetrating power, or accuracy. She had never touched it before. If she rashly snatched the gun, she, Xiongji, and the others would definitely die if she made the slightest mistake when using it. However, in the box, there was one of Ningxi's favorite Italian Boletta 92F pistol. She could guarantee that if she used the 2F pistol, there was an 80% chance that she could resolve this crisis. Shixiao and Xiongji were both stunned. Ningxi's moves were really amazing. Under that delicate appearance, who would have thought that there was such a terrifying explosive power hidden? At that moment, Ningxi had already loaded 7 bullets with the Italian Boletta 92F pistol. She was already aiming at the bald man. Stupid pig, kill that bitch. The bald man was furious. He was actually being pointed at with a gun by an entertainer. Moreover, the gun was loaded with bullets. The biggest advantage of the Italian Boletta 92F pistol was that it was almost universal, with more than 90% of the bullets produced in Philadelphia. There was almost no mismatch in caliber. As the bald man spoke, he quickly moved his gun towards Ningxi. He wanted to shoot Ningxi first. The bald man had strong confidence in his marksmanship. However, what he didn't expect was that before the gun could be aimed at Ningxi, the gun in Ningxi's hand had already fired. Bang! A muffled sound reverberated throughout the arena. At the same time as the gunshot rang out, a bloody hole had appeared between the bald, brawny man's eyebrows. Plop! The bald man fell to the ground. His body twitched for a moment before he breathed his last. Up until now, Ningxi didn't even glance at the bald, robust man at all. Her gaze only descended onto Shixiao and the white-clothed man who held his head and howled in grief. What kind of spear technique is that? I don't even need to look at it to know. Xiongji was shocked and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Chapter 448. Not only Xiongji, even Shixiao's face was lifeless. His mind was blank. Everything was beyond his original expectations and calculations. That actress called Ningxi, was she really just an actress? Just now, what did you guys say? Ningxi was like an iceberg, so cold that it made people's hair stand on end. Smelly whore. Kill her. As Ningxi spoke, the other foreigners also completely came back to their senses and realized what had happened. Just as they raised their arms holding the guns, before Ningxi could shoot, bang, bang, bang. Another few muffled gunshots rang out. The few foreigners with guns widened their eyes, and blood flowed from between their eyebrows. Then, their bodies fell straight to the ground, and their guns were flung far away. Fast, too fast. Miss Ning. Her hand speed is too fast. Xiongji couldn't help but exclaim. He added, not only is it fast, but her accuracy has also reached an extremely frightening level. This distance just happens to be the limit of the German pistol in Miss Ning's hands. Extreme hand speed coupled with extreme calculation ability, and extreme accuracy. She can't be just an actress. What does she do? How could an actress have this kind of ability? Even if you beat Xiongji to death, he would never believe it. At this moment, Xiongji suddenly smiled bitterly. He could only wonder what the boss was thinking. This kind of woman, did she need him to protect her? Did she need someone else's protection? It was still reasonable for her to protect others. Shi Xiao's mouth slightly opened, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, nothing came out. From the beginning to the end, Ningxi didn't even look at those foreigners. The gun in her hand seemed to be firing randomly, but the fact was, those foreigners didn't even have the chance to shoot. In just a moment, Ningxi shot several times, each shot was fatal. In the blink of an eye, only that foreign woman, Alice, was left. Ah! The white shirt man was still holding his head and wailing, like a pig being slaughtered. You're an eyesore. Scram! Ningxi swung her leg and kicked the man in white several meters away. Shi Xiao and Xiongji didn't even dare to breathe loudly, especially Shi Xiao. Although he wasn't afraid of Ningxi's explosive power and extremely skilled combat techniques, she had a gun in her hands, that terrifying spear technique. You are very lucky. If it was a few years ago, you would have been a dead man if you dared to speak to me like this. Ningxi glanced at Shi Xiao. Do you understand what I mean? I understand. Shi Xiao gritted his teeth and nodded in the end. His instincts told him that he couldn't afford to offend this woman. Miss Ningxi, kill that woman. Seeing that Alice was still alive, Xiongji said hurriedly. Ningxi looked at Alice. What did you just say about me? That I only know how to sell my body and that you can kill me with your hands? Hearing that, Alice frowned and said coldly, in my eyes, you're nothing, you stupid pig. With that, Alice quickly pulled out her gun. Bang! However, the muzzle of Ningxi's gun was the first to fire. Alice exclaimed. Ningxi's speed was too fast, much faster than her, and this bullet didn't hit her body. Instead, it hit the gun in her hand and sent it flying. Pa! Alice's gun was sent flying and smashed on the ground more than 10 meters away. Amazing! Kill her! Xiongji's face was full of excitement. No bullets. Ningxi also threw the empty gun aside. Just in time, we need to keep someone alive. Chapter 449. You're courting death. Alice glared at Ningxi. She ran as fast as the wind and threw a punch at Ningxi. Red and black level. Are you so arrogant now? Ningxi shook her head and looked indifferent. She didn't take Alice seriously at all. Be careful, that woman is very powerful. Xiongji couldn't help reminding her. As soon as he finished his words, Ningxi suddenly raised her right leg. It was extremely agile. She lifted it up a few centimeters and then slammed it down violently, forming two curved lines. Crack! The foreign woman, Alice, had just approached Ningxi when Ningxi's lower leg fell. It was heavy and fast. This leg directly hit Alice's head. Almost at the same time, Alice's whole body seemed to lose all feeling, and she fell to the ground like mud. Fainted. Xiongji was stunned. Ningxi's leg was really amazing. I forgot to tell you. I'm a black belt. Ningxi glanced at Alice, who was in a coma, and said calmly. When they saw the scene before them, Shi Xiao and Xiongji looked at each other in dismay. Both of their faces were lifeless, and they were almost numb from the shock. Ningxi, just then, they suddenly heard a familiar voice behind them. This voice, Lu Tingxiao? Boss. Ningxi ran over to the man and looked him up and down. After making sure he was unscathed, she breathed a sigh of relief. You're all right. That's great. You. At this moment, Lu Tingxiao's face was extremely ugly. His whole body seemed to be burning in a raging fire. He was so angry that he almost lost control. Who allowed you to come here? It was the first time that Ningxi had seen Lu Tingxiao so angry and scary. She shrank her shoulders at once. Boss, you're so scary. Lu Tingxiao gnashed his teeth. You're scared? Ningxi looked at her fingers and put on a pitiful expression. She said weakly, how can I not be scared? After all, I'm also a girl. I was so scared just now that my calves and stomach were trembling. Boss, don't yell at me. I want to be comforted Tilda, I want to be touched Tilda behind them. Shi Xiao, Xiongji, the corners of their mouths twitched, and their foreheads were full of black lines. Was this woman crazy? She was clearly arrogant to the point that she was about to ascend to the heavens, but where did she look the slightest bit afraid? As if the boss would believe her. You. Lu Tingxiao looked at the girl's panic-stricken face. Even if the flames were burning his body, he could only forcefully endure it. He did not dare to implicate her in the slightest. With a stiff face, he took a deep breath and finally suppressed the anger in his heart. He stretched out his wide palm and patted the girl's head. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Ningxi let out a long sigh of relief and secretly patted her chest. She had finally dodged a bullet. The boss was really scary when he was angry. Then, she continued to blink her eyes and said weakly, millimeter, millimeter, millimeter. I'm not afraid anymore when I see Sir Boss. As long as you don't yell at me. Lu Tingxiao said apologetically, I'm sorry, I lost my composure for a moment. I won't do it again. Shi Xiao, Xiongji, our dog eyes are blind. Who was this person? This was their boss, Lu Tingxiao? Are you fucking kidding me? Could it be that this person wasn't their boss, but another trap set by the enemy? The only one who was calm was Cheng Feng, who was following behind Lu Tingxiao. He pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose and had an expression that said, "You're all too inexperienced, that's why you're so uncalm." Chapter 450. In the car leaving the armory. Knowing that Lu Tingxiao was fine, Ningxi finally relaxed and looked at the scenery outside the car window in a daze. Feiqing was still a bustling city the last time she came here, but now there was only the devastation caused by the war. While Ningxi was looking out of the window, Lu Tingxiao's unfathomable gaze fell on her. No matter how flawless his plan was, he would never have thought that when he arrived with his men and opened the warehouse, he would see Ningxi, who was far away in the country, appear here, in such a dangerous place. But before he could feel his heart shattering, he was shocked by another scene. The girl made her move in an instant. In an instant, everyone died under her gun. She also subdued the foreign woman with a swift and fierce strike. At that moment, the girl's cold eyes and aura were so strange. There was nothing familiar about her. She was like a stranger. He knew, that girl was still Ningxi, that was her in the past. However, when she flew towards him in surprise and pitifully said that she was afraid, he knew that she was still his girl. Ningxi inadvertently turned her head and met Lu Tingxiao's deep gaze. She couldn't help but gulp nervously. Ah, Mr. Boss, why are you looking at me? Are you going to settle the score with me after this? You said you wouldn't be angry with me. Lu Tingxiao stopped thinking. I still have some things to deal with in Feiqing. Are you going back first or coming with me? Ningxi thought for a moment and immediately replied, I'll go back with you. Then she explained, anyway, I don't have any work to do these days. Since I'm here, I'll just take it as a vacation. Lu Tingxiao looked at her coldly and said in a cold tone, if you come with me, you're not allowed to leave my sight these days. Huh? Ningxi pulled a long face. Then I'll be bored to death. Lu Tingxiao's face darkened. Ningxi hurriedly corrected herself. No. How can I be bored with boss? It's my great honor to be with you. In the back seat of the car, Xiongji coughed lightly and lowered his voice. Miss Ningxi, is she really not schizophrenic? Shi Xiao rolled his eyes at him. Essence my ass. Haven't you seen it yet? She's clearly pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Tiger. Tiger means boss. Xiongji was still confused. Then how do you explain boss's attitude towards Miss Ningxi? This time, Shi Xiao was speechless. He choked and mumbled, how would I know? I was so scared that I peed my pants. Previously, he almost thought that the boss was an imposter. Cheng Feng, who was busy dealing with documents, could no longer bear to listen. He raised his head and glanced at the two of them. What do you two single dogs know? This is the power of love. The car drove all the way to the safe zone. In the hotel, Lu Tingxiao brought her directly to his suite. First, he led her to sit on the sofa, then went to the balcony to make a phone call. A moment later, Cheng Feng delivered a PSP game console, fashion magazines, and a bunch of snacks. After settling Ningxi down, Lu Tingxiao began to convene a meeting with his subordinates. There was a window in the middle of the meeting room, from which he could clearly see Ningxi in the opposite living room. She really did not leave his line of sight at all. Chapter 451. Sitting among a pile of game consoles, magazines, and snacks, Ningxi had a feeling that she was a pet waiting for its owner. After a while, Cheng Feng, Shi Xiao, Xiongji, and several others came in. The other subordinates who hadn't seen Ningxi before were all surprised to see a pretty girl sitting next to Lu Tingxiao. Shi Xiao and Xiongji looked at Ningxi, who was sitting on the sofa with a magazine in her hand, and the corners of their mouths twitched. Ningxi wasn't in the mood to eat, drink, and have fun at this moment. She secretly glanced at Lu Tingxiao and quickly sent a text message to a certain bastard while he was concentrating on his work. "Yun, you son of a bitch." In order to express her anger, she typed countless exclamation marks. Soon, the other side replied. "Cloud Radish, say that again, fuck. How dare he threaten her? He's in the right." Ningxi typed furiously, "As you wish. Son of a bitch. Cloud Radish, Ningxi. You're asking for it." Ningxi looked at this line of text and got angry. "You don't even allow others to talk about the wicked things you've done. You can't beat them openly, so you sneak attack them. Such despicable and cowardly behavior. Calling you a tortoise is an insult to tortoises." About 10 seconds later, the other side replied, "Cloud Radish, I sneak attacked them?" Ningxi continued to quickly type a message and sent it over. "Who else could it be? Don't tell me that Philo and Alice are not your people." This time, the other side replied almost instantly, "Cloud Radish, you guys are fighting?" Ningxi snorted, "Nonsense. If I wasn't smart and brave, I would have lost my life. Of course, this is not the point, don't change the subject." Cloud Radish, "Honey, of course this is the point." At the same time, in a bar in Las Vegas. Dazzling lights, deafening music, and men and women on the dance floor were reveling in a drunken stupor. In the middle of the bar, under a huge spherical crystal lamp, in a spacious and luxurious booth, sat a blonde Italian man. The man was handsome, but his eyes were a little evil. At this moment, he was surrounded by a large group of beautiful women with hot figures, and they were drinking and having fun wantonly. It was a scene of debauchery and debauchery. Just a few steps away from him sat a black-haired man with an oriental face. The man sat alone on the spacious sofa, wearing a Bluetooth headset and a laptop on the coffee table in front of him. He exuded an unapproachable aura, like a cold and silent humanoid weapon. No matter how merry the people in the bar were, no one dared to get close to him. It formed a strange and distinct contrast with the Italian man's debauchery. A moment later, the black-haired man nodded respectfully in the direction of the computer, then got up and walked to the Italian man opposite him. He asked in a calm tone, "Mr. Augustine, were you the one who ordered Firo's actions?" The blonde, blue-eyed Italian man raised his drunken face. "Aha! Firo. Oh, that's right, it's my order. What's the matter, my dear comrade?" The black-haired man said expressionlessly, "You've touched someone you shouldn't have." "Someone I shouldn't have touched." The Italian man had an absent-minded look on his face. Then, as if he suddenly remembered something, a look of realization appeared on his face. "You mean that woman?" Chapter 452. The Italian man shrugged innocently and said, "My dear friend, you can't blame me for this. The person I wanted to kill was Lu Tingxiao. She came to me on her own accord, killed all my men, captured Alice, and ruined all my plans." A cold glint flashed across the Italian man's eyes. The beauties who were clinging to him earlier did not dare to approach him. The black-haired man did not seem to notice. He said expressionlessly, "Mr. Augustine, you've violated our alliance." The Italian man stood up shakily and smiled nonchalantly. He reached out to pat the black-haired man's shoulder. "Hey buddy, relax. Satan hasn't made his move yet. I'm just giving him a hand." The black-haired man dodged Augustine's attack with lightning speed. His face was still expressionless as he said, "Mr. Augustine, due to your unauthorized actions, I'm afraid I have to officially inform you that from today onwards, our alliance ends here. The Italian man was stunned at first, then his expression changed instantly, and he said in a gloomy tone, "Do you know what you're talking about? Whose order was that?" "Satan." The Italian man shoved a beauty aside. His expression was extremely cold. "Then let him talk to me personally. You're nothing." In the next second, the black-haired man turned the laptop on the coffee table to face the Italian man. The computer screen showed a dimly lit room. A man was sitting on a spacious chair. The man's silhouette was shrouded in darkness. Only his head and long legs could be vaguely seen. "Satan, you're breaking our alliance. Just for a woman?" The Italian man looked at the computer screen angrily like an enraged lion. In contrast to the Italian man's rage, the man on the screen sounded as if he had just woken up. He spoke lazily and casually, "Just for a woman. You're messing with me." The Italian man treated it as a random excuse. He kicked the table beside him. His handsome face was extremely hideous. "You're breaking our alliance. You better think about the consequences." The man on the screen seemed to chuckle. "Consequences? Tang Yi, tell Augustine this." "Yes." The black-haired man nodded and looked at the Italian man. His cold eyes were devoid of any human emotions. "From now on, all the deals between us will be terminated." As soon as he finished speaking, the drunkenness on Augustine's face finally dissipated. His eyes were scarlet red, and his handsome face was incomparably twisted. The termination of all transactions also meant that they had lost 90% of the source of firearms. "All right, since that's the case, I'll let you know the consequences of betraying an ally." As soon as Augustine's voice fell, the music in the bar abruptly stopped. 7 or 8 burly men with guns slammed the table and stood up. The pitch-black muzzles of their guns were aimed directly at Tang Yi. Now, all they needed was an order from Augustine to turn Tang Yi into a sieve. However, at this moment, Tang Yi suddenly took off his gold-rimmed spectacles. Then, he stood up and straightened his cuffs. When he looked up at Augustine again, the indifference in his eyes had turned into a perverted, treacherous, and crazed look. Even his tone had become more sinister. "Mr. Augustine, I think you're mistaken about something." Chapter 453. "You stupid weakling. What did I do wrong?" Augustine said viciously. Suddenly, a joyful chuckle came from the computer. "Hehe, what an interesting title. Tang Yi, have a good night." After saying that, the computer went black. Augustine felt an inexplicable sense of unease when he heard what the man on the computer said just now. The black-haired man, Tang Yi, was Satan's second-in-command. He was extremely sensitive to numbers and was in charge of the organization's core accounts. He was protected by a group of experts, but he himself was completely helpless. This weakling was alone in his territory. What kind of danger could he be in? However, although he had never seen Tang Yi in action, it did not mean that he was completely helpless. Even if he had some skills, he was surrounded by his men. Moreover, there were so many guns pointed at him. What could he do? Augustine's expression became more and more ferocious, and he ordered his subordinates to surround Tang Yi. However, at this moment, Tang Yi, who had taken off his glasses, suddenly transformed into a black shadow, and his speed seemed to exceed the limits of an ordinary human. In the blink of an eye, he had already escaped from the black muzzles of the guns. At that moment, Augustine felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if an indescribable evil had taken over his body. In the next second, a bone-chilling dagger was pressed against the main artery on his neck. The pain made Augustine even more clear-headed. "Under normal circumstances, if you want to kill me, you'll need at least a fully armed special forces team. Mr. Augustine, are you looking down on me, or are you overestimating yourself?" Without his glasses, Tang Yi's incomparably deep eyes were suffused with a hint of morbid madness. You. Tang Yi, you better think this through. You know the consequences of going against us." Augustine's body trembled. He never thought that Tang Yi's skills would have reached such a level. "Mr. Augustine, allow me to remind you that this is Las Vegas. As I said earlier, you're the only one who needs to consider the consequences." As soon as Tang Yi finished speaking, The dagger in his hand flashed coldly. Augustine screamed in pain as one of his ears was sliced off. Fresh blood splattered and stained the ground red. Tang Yi licked the corner of his lips, his eyes filled with bloodlust. You should thank God that my dear junior sister is unharmed. It was your useless subordinates who died, otherwise, without waiting for Augustine to speak, dozens of men dressed in black surged in from outside the bar. Without saying a word, those men took out dozens of guns and shot at Augustine's men. In just a few breaths of time, Augustine's subordinates didn't even have time to resist before they were all dead. At this moment, Augustine's face was ashen. As expected, he should never underestimate the people around Satan. This time, he had made a fatal mistake. Tang Yi put on his glasses and took a white handkerchief from one of the men in black. He wiped his hands and resumed his cultured demeanor. Mr. Augustine, consider this a lesson for you today. I hope you'll remember it. Hearing this, Augustine covered his bloody ear and nodded. His eyes were filled with fear. I understand. I'll leave Las Vegas immediately and never come back. Chapter 454. Thank you for your cooperation. Having said that, Tang Yi led the men in black straight out of the bar. Augustine's face was full of fear, and at the same time, his heart was filled with anger. He would settle this debt clearly and get it back with interest. A bunch of lowly yellow-skinned people. One day, I will send all of you to hell. As soon as Augustine's voice fell, Tang Yi moved slightly and the dagger in his hand shot out like an arrow. Augustine didn't know what happened. His left ear was cut off by the dagger. Mr. Augustine, it seems that the ear is just an unnecessary decoration to you. Having said that, Tang Yi finally walked away in satisfaction. In the bar, there was only Augustine who kept wailing miserably and the ground was littered with corpses. In a hotel in Philadelphia. After sending the text, Ningxi threw her phone away in frustration. After the other party replied with "of course this is the main point," there was no more reply. This feeling of being controlled by someone at any time like a puppet on strings and being on tenterhooks all the time was terrible. She was lucky this time. What if she encountered a more difficult opponent next time? Ningxi stared blankly at Lu Tingxiao's cold face behind the glass window. A faint light flashed across her eyes. No. I can't continue to sit here and wait for death. Lu Tingxiao, who was listening attentively to his subordinate's report, suddenly raised his head and looked in Ningxi's direction. Ningxi immediately sat up straight and looked like an obedient child. After thinking for a while, she found a piece of white paper and a pen and wrote a line of words. "Mr. Boss, can I go to the bathroom? If you can, please take the pen." After she finished writing, she raised it and waved it in front of Lu Tingxiao's eyes. Lu Tingxiao noticed the white paper in the girl's hand. After seeing the words on it, the corners of his mouth that had been cold all this time curved up slightly. The subordinate who was talking paused for a moment, a little dumbfounded. Lu Tingxiao calmly picked up the pen on the table, changed his posture and reminded his subordinate, "Continue." After getting an affirmative answer, Ningxi slipped away. She felt as if she had returned to her primary school days, where she had to raise her hand and ask the teacher for permission to go to the bathroom. As night fell, the meeting finally came to an end. Shi Xiao talked to Cheng Feng as they walked. Even now, he was still in a daze. So, Boss already knew that there was something wrong with Hong Junhao. He deliberately let him go. This time, he also deliberately went deep into Philadelphia. His goal was to find out who the person behind him was. Cheng Feng nodded, yes. However, the final result was a little different from what we expected. Although the enemy appeared in Feiqing as we expected, they were not the people we expected, but another group of people. Our plan was also disrupted. This time, if it weren't for Miss Ningxi's unexpected appearance, you wouldn't have been able to delay the arrival of our people. You might have really died there. Shi Xiao's face flushed red when he heard this, and he said with a muffled voice, "Even if I really die there, I can only blame myself for being inferior. This time, it was indeed that woman who saved me. I have nothing to say, and I'm sincerely convinced." Although this incident was within his boss's plan, he felt even more defeated. Boss had repeatedly told him not to act rashly and to think twice before acting. However, he still believed Hong Junhao easily. Chapter 455. It was one thing for Xiongji to be careless, but for something like this to happen to him, it was a huge mistake. However, even his mistake was within the boss's expectations. It seemed that he wasn't fully trusted in the boss's heart yet. Shi Xiao, who had always been confident, tasted defeat for the first time. He said dejectedly, "Assistant Cheng, I heard that we are just boss's forces on the surface, but in fact, boss has a group of followers who are unimaginably powerful. Those people are boss's real confidants." Is that so? Even a weak woman beside boss was so powerful that he couldn't believe it, let alone the forces behind him. Oh, he actually questioned boss's judgment and insulted him again and again. In the end, it turned out that he was the ignorant, stupid, and arrogant person. Don't let your imagination run wild. You are all the same to the boss. Moreover, you are still young. There is still room for you to grow. There is no need to be anxious. Cheng Feng patted Shi Xiao's shoulder to comfort him and helplessly sighed. Shi Xiao was actually very talented, but his biggest shortcoming was that he was too impetuous, which led to his stagnation in realm. After this lesson, if he could really get rid of this bad habit, it would be a good thing. When he followed boss to the warehouse, he only saw the scene of Miss Ning Shi shooting those people and subduing the foreign woman. He didn't know what happened before, but from the fact that she could make an arrogant Shi Xiao say sincerely convinced, he could tell that this woman was probably more terrible than he had imagined. Xiongji scratched his head. "Assistant Cheng, who is that Miss Ning Shi? Judging from her skills, she is definitely not just an actress. Boss even asked me to protect her. Isn't this a joke? She doesn't look like someone who needs protection. I really can't figure it out." Cheng Feng pondered. "I don't know much about Miss Ning Shi. Even after seeing that scene today, I was no less shocked than you. Regarding this matter, just pretend that you don't know anything. Don't ask about it in front of boss. As for boss's orders, I still say the same thing, just follow them." Shi Xiao and Xiongji both nodded and had no objection to Cheng Feng's words. Seeing that Lu Tingxiao had finally finished his meeting, Ning Shi, who had been dozing off on the sofa, immediately got up. "Boss, are you done?" Lu Tingxiao pinched his eyebrows tiredly. "Okay, you play by yourself for a while. I'm going to take a shower." "Oh, I see." Ning Shi rolled her eyes, blinked innocently and said, "Boss, do I need to be in your sight?" Lu Tingxiao's body seemed to stagger when he heard that. He then turned around and said, "If you want to continue cooperating, I have no objections." Ning Shi. Humph. Damn it. As expected, he was no match for the Great Demon King. Moreover, the image of the Great Demon King bathing appeared in his mind. Stop. Looking at the girl's sullen expression, Lu Tingxiao could not help but walk over and ruffle her hair. His voice was slightly hoarse. "Don't say such things. My self-control is weaker than you think." Ning Shi. Again. And what was wrong with her words? Her words were clearly very pure. He was obviously the one who was too dirty. Chapter 456. After Lu Tingxiao entered the bathroom, Ning Shi recalled the look on Lu Tingxiao's face when he had scolded her. He had been so angry, but he had held it in because he didn't want to scare her. And there was a high possibility that Lu Tingxiao had seen the scene of her killing someone. But he hadn't said anything or asked anything. He was still comforting her gently as usual. Ning Shi hugged her knees and couldn't help showing a touch of warmth on her face. Then she cleared her throat and began to sing slowly. "When I fell in love with you, I didn't know how to feel. I found that meeting you was the best thing in my life. Who was the one who has been silently guarding me in the wind and rain? It turns out that you are the luck I want to keep the most. It turns out that we were so close to love. Although she couldn't see him, she could at least hear his voice." In the bathroom, Lu Tingxiao suddenly heard a girl's sweet and pleasant voice. His heart at the North Pole suddenly warmed up like the warm sun at the equator. 3 days later, at the airport in Hua Land. He had finally settled some matters and returned to China. After getting off the plane, Lu Tingxiao was about to take Ning Shi home when she said, "Boss, let me take you home." Lu Tingxiao raised his eyebrows. "You're taking me home?" Shouldn't it be a man taking a woman home? That's not the same. In addition to the relationship between a man and a woman, you are also my boss, and I am your most loyal employee. Of course, I should be the one to send you home. She could only rest assured when she saw him safely home. Lu Tingxiao's lips curled into a smile as he watched the girl spout nonsense with a straight face. That seems to make sense. Ningxi nodded. Of course. So I should be the one taking you home. Okay, you can take me home. He was happy to spend more time with her, no matter what. After getting into the car, Lu Tingxiao took out his phone and sent a text message to his son with his slender fingers. Open the window in an hour. There was no response from the other end of the line. However, Lu Tingxiao wasn't in a hurry. About 3 minutes later, the phone rang. The little boy had sent 3 exclamation marks. Lu Tingxiao smiled. He knew that his son had already guessed what he meant. An hour later, the car arrived outside the courtyard. Lu Tingxiao looked up and saw a small head waiting anxiously at the window. Very quickly, the small head disappeared with a whoosh. A moment later, a small figure flew in their direction. Subsequently, the little fellow did not stop as she passed by her papa, whom she had not seen for many days, and directly pounced in the direction behind him, Lu Tingxiao, who was completely ignored. All right, I'm already used to it. Seeing the little bun, Ningxi's face was instantly filled with surprise. She bent down to catch him and held him in her arms like a precious treasure. Little baby Bei the moment she hugged Xiaobao, she felt as if she had returned to the human world from hell. He was so warm and soft that she didn't want to let go. Little Bun clung to Aunt Xiao's arms. Just like a boat entering the harbor or a bird entering the woods, Little Bun was filled with satisfaction, joy, and peace of mind. Ningxi was being affectionate with Little Bun when she suddenly saw Lu Tingxiao standing alone in front of them. She put her hand on Little Bun's shoulder and said softly, Xiaobao, you haven't seen Dad for so many days. Don't you miss him? Little Bun looked at Lu Tingxiao with a thoughtful expression. Chapter 457. To think or not to think, that was the question. He should tell the truth in front of Xiaoxi. Seeing that the little Bun was about to give an answer that would break Lu Tingxiao's heart, Ningxi hurriedly said, Xiaobao, it's hard for Dad to work every day to support the family. Can you give Dad a hug? The little Bun nodded and ran to Lu Tingxiao. He raised his head and stretched out his short arms, asking for a hug. Lu Tingxiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He picked up his son and rubbed his head. Good boy. His son gave him face and stayed in his arms for 3 seconds. On the 4th second, he turned his head and stretched out his arms towards Ningxi, asking for a hug. Lu Tingxiao could only give the little guy back to Ningxi. Sigh, he couldn't keep his son at home. After leaving the Lu family mansion, Ningxi was about to go back to her apartment when she received a call from Lin Jiji, so she went to the company. Shengshe Entertainment. When she arrived downstairs, Ningxi looked up and saw Su Yimo on the huge LED screen above her head. It was Su Yimo's latest commercial for Chanel. In the commercial, Su Yimo changed into 12 sets of Chanel's most classic clothes from the past century. It was a very stylish scene. Under the LED screen, a few female artists from Su Yimo's party surrounded Su Yimo. They looked up at the commercial and discussed excitedly. Yimo, your commercial is way too high-end. No wonder Chanel wants Yimo to be their spokesperson in China. Not only is Yimo popular, but how many female artists in the entertainment industry can embody Chanel's noble and elegant temperament? At this time, someone happened to see Ningxi passing by, and deliberately said loudly, unlike someone who is so arrogant after getting a low-class and trashy game endorsement. Last time, we even saw her going to a place like Treasure Jade Pavilion to buy jade. Are you talking about Ningxi? Who else could it be? Phut, she went to Baoyu Pavilion with that little endorsement fee. Exactly. She probably saw that Sister Yimo likes jade and wanted to buy it herself, but in the end, she only bought a piece of junk that's only worth 100,000 yuan. She's just imitating others. What a joke. Su Yimo was surrounded in the middle. Hearing those people talking about Ningxi, she said impatiently, don't mention that name in front of me again. The female artists next to her immediately stopped when they heard this and replied carefully, got it, Sister Yimo. That lowly bitch doesn't deserve to appear here with your name. Let's not talk about it. I don't want her to freeload off Sister Mo's popularity every time. How shameless. Lin Gigi's office. Ningxi knocked on the door and walked in. Sister Gigi, what's the matter? Sit down. Lin Gigi gestured for her to sit down and then asked, do you know the brand Noble? Ningxi thought for a while. The perfume brand? Lin Gigi, that's right. Ningxi didn't know why Lin Gigi asked this question. She thought for a while and said what she knew. As far as I know, it's a very unique brand. It's just that compared with well-known luxury brands like Chanel, Tiffany, and Arani, it's a niche brand. Not many people seem to know about it. Chapter 458. Lin Gigi nodded. Yes, it's a niche brand and many people are unfamiliar with it. In fact, Noble was a well-known perfume brand that had been around for more than 2 centuries. It had always been the favorite of royal politicians and popular celebrities. So far, there were more than 240 custom-made and publicly available fragrance models. It could be said that every fragrance was a legend. Noble has never been publicly available in China, so it's not well known in the country. But I heard that Noble is preparing to expand into the Chinese market and is holding a nationwide audition in Xiong City, Taiju, and Macau. Ningxi blinked. Are you going to sign me up, Gigi? I've already signed up. I sent them a clip of you in the world. I just wanted to give it a try, but I just received a notification that you've passed the audition, Lin Gigi said. Hearing Lin Gigi's answer, Ningxi's eyes lit up. What? I've passed the audition? But shouldn't such a luxury brand look for celebrities like Su Yimou in order to expand into the domestic market? That's true, so I'm surprised that you were selected. Su Yimou didn't attend the audition because she's already signed with Chanel. Chanel also makes perfume, so it's impossible for her to sign with Noble. But without Su Yimou, there are elites from all the entertainment companies in the country, almost all of whom are A-list and super A-list celebrities. You'll be under a lot of pressure. So even though it's a rare opportunity, you don't have to be nervous. It's a pleasant surprise anyway. It'll be great if you can get it, but it's okay if you can't, Lin Gigi comforted her. Even though she had passed the audition, she didn't have much hope. She just wanted Ningxi to broaden her horizons. For a newcomer like Ningxi, it was already a kind of qualification to enter such a high-end brand, even if she just entered the preliminary. Yes, I know, Gigi. I'll stay calm and just take it as gaining experience. Ningxi said modestly. In fact, she was ambitious. No matter how unfavorable the environment was, anything was possible until the last second. By the way, Gigi, what's the theme of the perfume endorsement? Ningxi asked. Just one word, Noble. The preparation time is 3 days. 3 days later, the final audition will take place in Luoyang City, Guizhou, Lin Gigi replied. Ningxi murmured, 3 days is enough. I will think about how to express this theme in the next few days. As for the country, she was even more familiar with it, so there was no pressure at all. The theme this time is nobility, so I'm sure you'll need a full set of clothes. If there's anything you need, I'll try my best to help you apply with the company, Lin Gigi said. All right. I'll let you know when the time comes. Thank you, Big Sis Gigi. I'm going back to prepare Tilda 3 days later. Luocheng Airport, Ningxi took off her sunglasses and looked at the strange yet familiar environment. Her eyes wandered and the corners of her mouth rose slightly. After a year, she came back here again. A year ago, she was still wandering around without a place to stay. A year later, her dream had already begun to set sail. This time, although Lin Gigi did not have much hope, she still accompanied her. After all the big shots in the country would be there. She was worried that Ningxi would not be able to handle them. Ningxi, you really don't need anything? Lin Gigi asked worriedly. Ningxi nodded firmly. I don't need anything. What I need is very simple. I've already prepared it myself. Chapter 459. The next morning. They took the elevator to the top floor of the Nobel building. After passing through the glass cabinets with all kinds of classic perfumes, They arrived at the audition venue. Ningxi followed Lin Jiji in. She was almost blinded by the dazzling lights. There were many superstars in the room. Every one of them was a big shot, and there were only a few newcomers. In order to match the noble theme of the day, everyone was dressed very dazzlingly. Most of them knew each other and were greeting each other politely. The newcomers were seizing the opportunity to curry favor with some big shots. It was very lively inside. When Ningxi appeared at the door, everyone was stunned. The whole waiting room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Of course, it wasn't because a newcomer like Ningxi was too famous and shocked everyone, but because compared to those popular female stars, Ningxi's clothes were too eye-catching. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was crazy. Ningxi was wearing a dirty mud-colored dress and a pair of old brown leather shoes. She didn't have any accessories on her. She didn't even have her hair styled. Her slightly messy hair was casually hanging down her back. A moment later, everyone looked at her strangely. Because most of the people in the room were big shots, they didn't care about what they said. They didn't lower their voices and began to talk about her in front of Ningxi. Who is she? She's dressed like a beggar. Did she come to the wrong place? I don't think so. Didn't you see that she was brought here by Lin Jiji? Although these people didn't know Ningxi, they all knew that Lin Jiji was the top agent of Lung Manyun. Seeing Lin Jiji, they all looked incredulous. Ah, I remember. Don't tell me this woman dressed in rags is Lin Jiji's new artist. Even if Lung Manyun is gone, Lin Jiji doesn't have to bring such a girl. Is Shengsha Entertainment so poor? They don't even have a decent stylist. How can Shengsha Entertainment be poor? They just don't care about it. Lung Manyun retreated for a man, so Lin Jiji can't shirk the responsibility, right? She can't even take care of her own artists. I heard that she was kept in the dark. As her manager, she only found out about it when Lung Manyun announced it on Weibo. Looks like Lin Jiji isn't that good after all. Zhao Meishan is still the best manager of Golden Era. At this moment, an A-list female star from Starlight Entertainment walked up to Lin Jiji. She had a concerned expression on her face, but her eyes were filled with mockery. Sister Lin, did you bring your artist here for the audition? Lin Jiji nodded slightly. I signed her up casually. I didn't expect her to enter the preliminaries, so I brought her here to gain some experience. His words were modest and appropriate, and he did not put himself too low. Being able to stand out among the most popular female stars in the country was already a manifestation of strength in itself. Xing Hui looked regretful. She looked at Ningxi behind her and shook her head. Sister Lin, I don't mean to criticize you, but you can't give up on yourself even if you're here to accompany them. Or, after Lung Manyun left, you fell to such a state. If that's the case, why don't you quit being a manager in Golden Era and become my assistant? Although the salary isn't high, it's still better than being your assistant. Chapter 460. Starlight and Golden Era had always been enemies. The female star who spoke was Li Leiling. She had lost her title of Best Actress to Lung Manyun several times. It was rare to see Lin Jiji in such dire straits. Naturally, she would not let go of the opportunity to ridicule her. Watching the two sides fight, the people around them all had the attitude of watching a good show. Someone even teased, speaking of which, I happen to be in need of an assistant. Are you interested, Sis Lin? Li Leiling put on a pleased expression. Hehe, I didn't expect Sis Lin to be so popular. Even if the newbie can't make it, I won't have to worry about not having a backup plan. Ningxi watched as Lin Jiji was besieged by a group of big shots in the circle, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She remembered Lin Jiji's instruction that no matter what happened, she should try not to speak. She found a quiet corner and sat down. She closed her eyes slightly, not being disturbed by the outside world, and concentrated on preparing her emotions. Not long after, the auditions began. Ningxi drew a good number. There were 30 people in total, and she drew the number right in the middle. Li Leiling drew number 14. She looked at the number 15 in Ningxi's hand and shook her head with a sigh. TSK, it's such a good number. What a pity. Soon, the first interviewee entered the audition hall. The first interviewee was already terrifying enough. Even though she did not have a good family background or education, she had relied on her own strength to become the best actress of the Golden Horse Awards. Many of the female stars were nervous when they saw Fang Xiaowen was the first to enter the audition hall. Li Leiling, on the other hand, was full of disdain. She's just a peasant with a primary school education. How could she understand the meaning of nobility? Even though Li Leiling did not have a particularly dazzling title, she was still popular. Her biggest advantage was that she came from a wealthy family. Her father was a high-ranking official, and her mother was a famous fashion tycoon. She had received a noble education since young, and was proficient in the 4 arts. Among the female stars present, there might be some who were more popular than her, but none of them were from families that were richer than her. Li Leiling's outfit alone was probably more expensive than Nobel's endorsement fee. No wonder she was so confident. In less than a minute, Fang Xiaowen came out. Her agent immediately went up to ask her about the situation. Fang Xiaowen shook her head with a gloomy face. Her agent was a little disappointed, but she still comforted her. Li Leiling crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking as if she had expected it. "TSK, I knew it. A country bumpkin can be so noble." In addition to Li Leiling, there were other female stars with good family backgrounds who obviously looked down on Fang Xiaowen. At this moment, their expressions were a little sarcastic. Fang Xiaowen couldn't take it anymore and stormed out of the door when she saw everyone ridiculing and mocking her for overestimating herself. Although she had fought her way to the title of Best Actress, she still couldn't get rid of the influence of her family background and education. In the corner, Ningxi opened her eyes and looked at Fang Xiaowen's back. There was a trace of regret in her eyes. Fang Xiaowen felt it was a pity. With her acting skills and popularity, this endorsement deal would have been a piece of cake. The second female star who went in for the interview had a very rich father who threw a lot of money into the entertainment circle to get her out. Still, she came out in less than a minute. The third female star's parents were also from the entertainment industry. She worked hard enough and was a classic example of a talented person. She lasted for 3 minutes but still failed in the end. Chapter 461. Watching the actresses enter and exit the audition one by one, many of whom were A-list actresses, the pressure on the remaining actresses inevitably increased. Especially when the director of the Nobel commercial, Cook, kept cursing in the audition hall. Cook's Chinese wasn't bad. Everyone outside could hear his curses clearly. Did they really understand what I said? I suspect there's something wrong with their IQ. What I want is nobility, elegance, not a soulless puppet that dances on a music box. Fang Xiaowen? No, she can't do it. Her performance was good, but her eyes betrayed her lowly soul. Xu Jiaojiao? Are you kidding? She's like a walking accessory rack. How vulgar. Meng Shi? She can be an excellent actress, but she's definitely not the noble goddess in my heart. The previous one? You mean number 13? Oh my God. She's lying to me maliciously. She doesn't know anything about the zither. Listening to Cuck's extremely harsh and blatant nitpicking, the originally arrogant female stars outside didn't look too good. Does this foreigner even know what he's doing? He's criticizing everyone. I think he's just prejudiced against the Chinese. His words are too harsh. He already said it's just a performance. Don't tell me he really knows how to play. According to his logic, an actor is a god who is proficient in all kinds of things. Only those who don't have the ability will find excuses from others. Soon, it was number 14's turn. After saying this, Li Leiling confidently walked into the audition hall. When Li Leiling pushed the door open, Cook, who was originally full of anger, suddenly froze. Li Leiling was wearing a vintage and luxurious Chinese cheongsam, a valuable pearl necklace around her neck, and her hair was tied up in a bun with a clear jade hairpin. Not only did she embody nobility and elegance, but she also displayed the characteristics of China. After seeing Li Leiling, Cook's eyes immediately lit up, and even his attitude softened. "Oh, my dear baby, come here. Let me take a good look." Li Leiling let Cook look at her without any fear. She had been educated as a noble since she was a child. Her every word and action naturally exuded a noble temperament. She did not need to act at all. Cook sized her up and was very satisfied. "Miss Lee, you can start your performance now." The audition hall was very big, and there were all kinds of props in it. There was a zither, a piano, a brush, a chess set, a needle and thread, a fan, a handkerchief. Li Leiling casually glanced at them and touched a zither. This one. Compared to the guzheng, the guqin was more difficult to play. It had a range of 4 octaves and 2 notes, 7 scattered notes, 91 overtones, and 147 pressed notes. There were many playing techniques. If you wanted to pretend to be Cook, it was impossible. Cook had lived in China for 20 years and deeply loved Chinese culture. He was a complete Chinese expert. Previously, there was a female star who tried to fool him, but she was mercilessly humiliated by Cook. Seeing that Li Leiling had also chosen the zither, Cook's gaze was a little judgmental. However, when she began to play, Cook's gaze gradually changed. Chapter 462. After Li Leiling's performance, Cook revealed an expression of struggle and hesitation for the first time. Previously, he had told the actresses that they had failed the audition and told them to get lost on the spot. Cook and his assistant discussed for a long time. In the end, the assistant walked to Li Leiling and said politely, "Miss Li Leiling, we will continue with the audition. Could you please wait outside for a while?" What he meant was that he was satisfied with her performance, but he wanted to see if there were any better candidates later on. Li Leiling nodded. Of course. How could there be anyone better than her? The endorsement was definitely hers. Under the anxious gazes of the remaining people, Li Leiling finally came out. She had been in there for a full 10 minutes, and there was only the sound of the zither. There was no sound of Cook's angry roar. Li Leiling had a determined look on her face. She did not leave like the other eliminated contestants. Instead, she found a seat and continued to wait. It was obvious that Li Leiling had entered the final round, and it was very likely that she was already the candidate in Cook's heart. As for the rest, if none of them could surpass Li Leiling, then they could only serve as foils for her. All of a sudden, the other female stars wavered, especially those with high statuses. They obviously did not want to embarrass themselves, but they could not bear to part with such a high-end endorsement. Next, get ready on the 15th. The assistant informed outside the door. At that moment, Ningxi was still immersed in her own world. Lin Jiji did not disturb her and only accompanied her quietly. Li Leiling looked at Ningxi, who was curled up in the corner, and felt even more proud. "Sister Lin, I really don't want to criticize you, but of all the people you could have chosen, you just had to choose a money-losing person who was kicked out of Starlight. Don't tell me you're still insisting on letting her audition at a time like this. You're not the only one who will embarrass yourself, but the entire golden era." Following Li Leiling's words, everyone's gaze fell on Ningxi. That's right, there's still this one at the bottom. With her in front, they shouldn't be too badly outshone by Li Leiling, right? In addition to those female stars who were waiting for a good show, there were also a few who had been waiting to see what would happen. They wondered if Ningxi deliberately dressed like this and actually had some tricks that she didn't want them to know. Maybe she would change her clothes later. "Sister Jiji, I'm done." In the corner, Ningxi opened her eyes. Lin Jiji nodded. "Good luck. The auditions will start on the 15th. The assistant began to call out. Ningxi stands up, straightens her skirt and collar, and walks into the audition hall with a straight face, under everyone's reaction. As soon as Ningxi went in, there was a huge commotion outside. "Oh my god, she really dared to go in dressed like this. I thought she had some trump card up her sleeve. I didn't expect her to go in dressed like a beggar. Cook is so scary. Isn't she afraid of being sprayed to death? TSK, the ignorant are fearless." Sure enough, just as the female stars were thinking this, they heard Cook's angry roar. "Oh my god. You're insulting me. You're insulting Noble. Please get out now." Chapter 463. Li Leiling took a sip of the fruit drink her assistant brought over. She was overjoyed. "Tut, It's better than I thought. Since you know you will fail, why do you have to show off? Do you think there will be a miracle? Li Leiling picked up her cell phone and dialed a number leisurely. Hello, Shui Luo. Leiling, have you finished the audition? What's the result? A gentle voice came over the phone. Yes, I just finished. The result? Of course I didn't let you down. Among the first 13 auditions, there were a few that she was afraid of. But for the rest, there were no competitors at all. She was completely confident that she would win. I knew you would be fine. Haha, thank you for letting me win. Otherwise, this endorsement would have been yours. What are you talking about? We are sisters. Don't mention it. Besides, you have helped me a lot. Thanks to you for introducing your mother to my father's company last time. It's just a small matter. By the way, do you know who I saw just now? Who? Your adopted daughter from the countryside, Ning Shi. Why did she go to the audition? Who knows what kind of dogshit luck she had to actually pass the preliminary test. But it's also thanks to her luck that I was able to watch a good show. Do you know? The theme of our commercial is nobility, but she came here dressed like a beggar. What? Is she crazy? I think so. Why are you so afraid of this kind of person? She's digging her own grave. Well, I'm not talking to you anymore. Wait for my return. At the same time, in the audition hall. Facing Cuck's incredulous gaze and mockery, Ning Shi stood there quietly. Her expression did not change at all, and her eyes were clear and clean. On the contrary, facing such a pair of clear eyes, Cuck inexplicably had an illusion of guilt. In fact, the girl's dressing today was not too excessive. It was just that compared with the extravagant and dazzling female stars outside, it seemed too casual and perfunctory. Although the color of her dress looked dirty and old, it was actually very clean and tidy. Her small face, which had no makeup at all, reminded him of a Chinese poem, hibiscus out of clear water, nature carves. However, facing such an unprepared audition, Cuck still felt insulted. He was determined to eliminate her. You. I'm talking to you. Don't you understand Chinese? You have been eliminated. Please leave this place immediately. Don't affect the people behind you. He didn't even have the mood to look at her name. When Cuck was yelling, Ning Shi had already walked to the zither that Li Leiling had just played, and her fingers seemed to casually pluck the strings a few times. Seeing this, Cuck became even angrier. Please do not casually touch the Dao. Before he could finish speaking, a string of extremely smooth and skillful zither notes lingered in his ears. This is, you actually know the Guangling powder. Cuck was slightly shocked. This was one of the extremely difficult songs in ancient zither songs. Just now, Li Leiling only chose a song dancing in the autumn wind of Wutong leaves. Ning Shi did not speak. She slowly sat in front of the zither and began to play. Cuck was attracted by the increasingly exciting sound of the zither, and for a moment, he forgot to speak. Chapter 464. Guangling San is one of the 10 famous Guqin songs in the history of Chinese music. Its melody is impassioned and generous. It is the only existing Guqin song in China that has a murderous and fighting atmosphere. It expresses the spirit of avenging one's father and has a high ideological and artistic value. Listening to the girl's Guangling San, Cuck's expression became more and more shocked. This is his favorite of all the Guqin songs, because it is not a decadent sound. It expresses a kind of rebellious spirit and fighting will. What shocked him even more was that as a girl, not only was she skilled, but she was also able to accurately play the Guangling powder's aura. Cuck was completely immersed in the sound of the Guqin. He stared at the girl in front of him. Her clothes were not bright. She did not put on any makeup. She even looked like a beggar. However, when she sat in front of the Guqin, when she began to play the music, although she dressed like a beggar, no one would think that she was really a beggar. There must be a story behind her. After playing the song, Cuck could not come back to his senses for a long time. After a long while, he suppressed his excitement and said, "Miss, your Guangling San is beyond my imagination." "Thank you." Ning Shi nodded slightly to express her gratitude. Her face was as calm as an ancient well. The girl in front of him, whether she was reprimanded or praised, was always calm. It made him feel that there was a trace of nobility in this girl. Yes, it was nobility, and it was the kind of nobility that only a real aristocrat would have. Even if she was down and out, the noble aura in her bones would never change. It was amazing. Just now, no one could give him this kind of feeling. Even Li Leilang's performance couldn't be given full marks. He felt that it was too deliberate and polished. Why did this girl dressed like a beggar in front of him give him a noble feeling? Kuk took a deep look at the girl, and his heart was full of excitement. It took him a long time to calm down and continue the audition. Excuse me, how do you understand the meaning of the word noble? The answers of those artists just now were roughly the same. They thought that nobility was knowledge and cultivation, and it was a combination of internal and external cultivation. He naturally agreed with this answer. At this moment, he was looking forward to the girl's answer. After hearing Kuk's question, Ningxi knew that Kuk had recognized her performance just now. Now, she only had one last step left. After deliberating over her wording, she began to narrate, I think that true elegance and nobility is not to mention the name of a luxury brand, not to twirl the expensive accessories on your wrist, not to show off your beauty and knowledge. True nobility is to be unconcealable even if you are in ragged clothes and dirty hair. Hearing this, Kuk's eyes lit up, and his whole face began to shine. Ningxi continued, a woman can be identified by her fragrance. Perfume can reflect a person's taste better than any other luxury goods. I think for a woman, perfume is more important than clothes, just like temperament is more important than appearance. As one of the classic fashion elements, perfume was different from other fashion elements such as clothing, makeup, and hairstyles. Perfume was the most classic and lasting. The taste of good will never go out of style. Kuk couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised and nodded in agreement. Yes, you said it very well. This girl's interpretation was perfect for their theme. Chapter 465. Outside the audition hall. The waiting female stars first heard Kuk's angry rebuke, then suddenly quietened down, followed by a passionate melody. One of the female stars sneered. I thought Lin Jiji had prepared a trump card for her, but she's playing the zither just like Li Leilang. With Li Leilang in front of her, isn't she just asking to be humiliated? Lin Jiji's professionalism is getting worse and worse. Even if she's just a small assistant, I don't trust her. Someone who knew a little frowned. This song seems to be more difficult than the one Li Leilang played. But I don't think it's going to work. Li Leilang was more familiar with the zither. She was indeed nervous for a second when she heard the skillful and difficult zither playing. However, she soon snorted disdainfully. Sister Lin, it's fine if your little girl from the countryside doesn't know anything, but don't tell me you don't know anything either. The ancients would burn incense and wash their hands before playing an elegant musical instrument like the zither. Their attire would also have to match the instrument. She's insulting the history of China with that kind of honor. Heh, just wait to be scolded by Kuk. The others listened to Li Leilang's words and agreed with her. Lin Jiji's expression was still calm as she waited for Ningxi's result. The fact that Kuk did not chase Ningxi out the moment she started playing meant that she had taken the first step to success. However, Ningxi's method was still too risky. She had no idea what the final result would be. After a while, Kuk's roar could not be heard even after she finished playing the song. Everyone looked at each other and could only continue to wait. However, the wait was even longer than the wait for Li Leilang. Some people could not help but start pacing back and forth anxiously. What's going on inside? Why isn't she coming out yet? Who knows? Maybe the director is so angry that scolding her isn't enough to vent his anger. Kuk is one of the top 10 advertising directors in the world. It's normal for him to have a bad temper. I think even Golden Era is going to be implicated this time. At the same time, in the audition hall. After Ningxi explained her understanding of nobility, Kuk, who repeatedly agreed, finally remembered to ask about Ningxi's identity. He grabbed the information of the auditioners from his assistant and then saw a name that surprised him. Ningxi. Oh, God. You are Meng Chang'e. Meng Chang'e. Yes, it was a role in a movie I participated in. Lin Jiji had said that she had sent him the trailer of The World, so Ningxi wasn't surprised that he knew the name. She just wondered if Kuk was too excited. Dear Miss Ning, when I first saw Meng Changa, I was deeply attracted. I can't wait to watch this movie. Can you tell me when it will be released? Kuk had an expression of regret that he found out too late. Because her ancient costume was too different from her daily dress, he didn't recognize her immediately and almost drove her out in the first place. For an actor, the happiest thing was that his role was recognized. Ningxi replied politely, "The movie is still being edited. I don't know the specific release date, but it's about a month away. Thank you very much, Director Cook." Chapter 466. No, 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 she deserves my praise. Although Meng Changa was a villain in the trailer, he exuded a lofty and noble temperament from the inside out. That was why he chose Ningxi, a newcomer, from a group of popular female stars. Finally, he didn't expect her to perform so well today. It was a pleasant surprise. Kuk said apologetically, "Miss Ning, I'm very sorry. Because of my ignorance and superficiality, I almost missed you." "You're right. Real nobility is in temperament, not appearance." Kuk then took Ningxi to see the perfumes in the display cabinets in the audition hall. For 2 centuries, Noble has adhered to the ancient aromatherapy distillation technology passed down from generation to generation. The materials selected are all produced in the world's top regions. Noble deserves its reputation as the fragrance of nobility. I'm very honored to be able to shoot a commercial for such a brand. In order to fully display the charm of Noble, I have very strict requirements for my spokesperson. Thank God for letting me meet you. I'm confident that this will be a wonderful collaboration. Seeing that Kuk and Ningxi couldn't stop talking, the assistant walked over and whispered, "Director, there are still many people waiting outside. Do you want to inform the next audition candidate?" Kuk was finally free. He hurriedly said, "There's no need. I've already chosen Miss Ning as my spokesperson. You can have the others leave." Outside the audition hall, under the eager gazes of the female stars, the door was finally opened and Kuk's assistant came out. "Ladies and gentlemen, the spokesperson for Noble has been chosen. That concludes today's audition. To thank you for coming all the way here, Noble Corporation will be arranging a 3-day luxurious trip for all of you. I wish you all a pleasant memory." As soon as the assistant finished speaking, everyone was stunned, especially the female stars who hadn't even gone in for the audition. "What? The spokesperson has been chosen? But we haven't auditioned yet." Although it was still a little hard to accept, it was within their expectations. Many famous female stars were relieved that they didn't have to go in and embarrass themselves. They walked up to Li Leiling politely and said, "Leiling, congratulations. If Leiling gets the endorsement, I'll be convinced too." Li Leiling stood up reservedly and thanked everyone for their compliments. Then she walked up to her assistant. "Thank you for Director Cook's recognition. I won't let him down." Although the assistant's Mandarin wasn't as good as Cook's, he realized that something was wrong. "No, no, no. Beautiful ladies, I think you've made a mistake." "A mistake? What mistake?" Everyone was puzzled. The spokesperson chosen by Director Cook is not Miss Li Leiling, but Miss Ningxi. The assistant slowed down and spoke clearly in Chinese. "What? Ningxi? The one dressed like a beggar? Are you joking?" Hearing this, Li Leiling's face turned purple. "Mr. Assistant, is there a mistake somewhere? Are you sure Mr. Cook is talking about Ningxi?" She had already reported the good news to Ning Xueluo, but now she was told that the spokesperson was not her, or even someone else, but Ningxi, the country bumpkin she had despised. The assistant nodded with certainty. "There's no mistake. It's indeed Miss Ningxi who just went in." "Oh." Chapter 467. Li Leiling took a deep breath and said righteously, "Mr. Assistant, this result was simply unconvincing. I need a reasonable explanation." The assistant said helplessly, "Miss Li, it's Director Cook's decision. I can't change it." "Then let me see Director Cook. I want to talk to him face to face," Li Leiling insisted. The other female stars were also shocked. They all suspected that the assistant had made a mistake. Even Lin Jiji was surprised by the result. The assistant had no choice but to say, "Okay, I'll pass on the message for you." While everyone was waiting anxiously, the assistant soon came out and said to them, "Miss Lee, Director Cook asked me to tell you and the other ladies that when Noble's TV commercial comes out, everyone will know that Miss Ningxi is worthy of her title." Then he bowed like a gentleman and said no more. He looked at the corner and asked, "Are you Ms. Lin Jiji, Miss Ningxi's agent? Director Cook would like to invite you in to discuss the details of the cooperation." "Okay, thank you." Lin Jiji paused, then stood up and followed the assistant into the audition hall. Behind them, there was only Li Leiling, whose face was flushed, and a group of stunned female stars. "Damn it. Is it really Ningxi? How could we lose to such a person? What a joke. Actually, I wanted to say it just now. Not to mention Ningxi, she is Lin Jiji's artist. How could she be so simple? No matter what, Lin Jiji would never make such a low-level mistake. In the end, she really came prepared. We were still too careless. Tut, it seems that there will be another dark horse in the entertainment circle in the future. Phut, Li Leiling is so embarrassed this time. She was suppressed by Lung Manyun before. Now that Lung Manyun is gone, she will be suppressed by Lin Jiji's artist again. After talking about the cooperation. On the way back, Lin Jiji looked at the girl beside her thoughtfully. The more she spent time with her, the more unfathomable she felt. Ningxi had been in the state of meditation and hadn't eaten lunch. Now she was holding a hot dog and nibbling it. Seeing Lin Jiji staring at her, she puffed her cheeks and asked vaguely, "Sister Jiji, why are you looking at me? Don't you think you're lucky to have such a witty companion like me?" Lin Jiji chuckled. "Previously, I always thought that this method was very risky because Cook is a Chinese expert. I was worried that your acting would be seen through, but I didn't expect you to play the zither so well. To have such a standard, you need at least 10 years of practice. However, I don't think I saw any mention of this specialty in your information." She almost choked on her saliva. "Sister Jiji, you think too highly of me. Do I look like the kind of person who would spend so much time cultivating?" With that, he raised a finger. "To tell you the truth, I've only studied for a month, and I only know this one piece. Fortunately, my memory is not bad. I just memorized it by rote. When I first learned it, my only thought was to show off." Hearing Ningxi's answer, Lin Jiji paused and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I see," Ningxi nodded. "Yes, I like to learn a little bit of everything. I learn a lot of things, but in fact, I'm not proficient in any of them. It's fine if I can master it quickly, but I only know a little about the skills that take a long time." She didn't have the time to cultivate her character. Her only goal was to survive. Because of her experience in the Ning family, she had to crazily learn all the fields and knowledge she didn't understand in order to feel safe. Chapter 468. Because of the upcoming perfume commercial, Ningxi needed to stay in Luo City for a period of time. Taking advantage of this opportunity, she had a very important thing to do. She was going to visit someone. Midnight. Ningxi set off for St. Bernardin, a city near Luo City. Because no one would recognize her in such a place, she didn't need to disguise herself, so she didn't put on makeup. She just changed into a simple and comfortable white t-shirt and jeans. St. Bernardin had been on the list of the most dangerous cities in the country for 5 years in a row. A large number of low-income people gathered here. It was located on the main smuggling route and was the place with the most riots in the country. Ningxi paid the driver double the price, and he didn't dare to go any further. As soon as Ningxi got out of the car, he immediately drove away. This place was like an abandoned ruin, most of which were low, moldy, dilapidated buildings and abandoned garbage dumps. In the dark alleys, you could see secret deals everywhere. However, the entertainment industry here was very developed. Even though it was late at night, it was still very lively. There were sounds of drinking, playing finger-guessing, and gambling everywhere. Among the pedestrians on the street, most of the men were muscular and had hideous tattoos on their bodies, making them look like fiends. The women, on the other hand, were dressed in sexy clothes and had thick gothic makeup on their faces. So, when Ningxi, dressed like a high school student, walked into St. Bernardin late at night, she was like a little white rabbit walking in a pack of wolves. On the side of the street, pairs of probing eyes were coldly sizing up the stranger who had suddenly stepped into their territory. With a lollipop in her mouth and headphones in her ears, Ningxi walked through the streets comfortably as if she was walking on an ordinary street. Because she looked like she was just going home, those eyes just looked at her, but no one took the initiative to find fault with her. After all, anyone who dared to appear in St. Bernardin late at night, not to mention an adult, even a child of a few years old, couldn't be an ordinary person. There must be a powerful force behind him, and anyone with a little bit of vigilance wouldn't go there to court death. After passing through a slum with all kinds of people mixed together, her field of vision gradually widened. Not far away, she was close to the downtown area. The closer she went to the center, the more prosperous it was. That was where the top people of St. Bernardin lived. After a year, there was not much change here. According to her memory, Ningxi came to the door of a detached small building with ease. This small building was surrounded by a dense forest. It looked gloomy, a little like a witch's castle in a fairy tale. The house was dark without any light. Was he asleep? Or is the master not here? Ningxi pushed open the gate of the courtyard and walked to the door of the small building. She pressed the doorbell. The doorbell sounded very abrupt in the empty night. He waited for a while, but there was no response. He pressed the button twice more, but it was still quiet inside. No one opened the door. Ningxi scratched her head and looked at the row of flower pots under the windowsill at the door. She counted to the third pot and took out a bunch of keys from under the flower pot. Sigh. This level of concealment of keys really hasn't changed in 10,000 years. After getting the key, Ningxi directly opened the door and entered the house. She fumbled around to turn on the lights in the house and searched upstairs and downstairs. Sure enough, she wasn't home. Ningxi glanced at the time on her phone and sat down on the sofa in the living room downstairs. She decided to wait here for her master to come back. Chapter 469. In the cold room, Ningxi waited for a long time, but the owner still hadn't returned. After a while, Ningxi got up and was attracted by some cartoon figurines on the table. Her curious eyes looked at the figurines for a long time, and the corners of her mouth rose slightly, forming a smile. The person didn't change at all, as if he was living in a two-dimensional world. But, it's really exquisite. Ningxi walked up, randomly picked up a figurine, and played with it for a while, as a way to pass the boredom of waiting. The figurine was very exquisite, and every part seemed to have been carefully polished. The figurine's design was very unique, with a proud and lazy posture, holding two realistic guns in both hands. I have two guns. When Ningxi accidentally touched the button on the figurine, the cartoon character suddenly spoke. Caught off guard, even Ningxi was startled and subconsciously threw the cartoon figurine away. I have two guns, one is called Shoot, and the other is called Ah. Looking at the cartoon figurine that she threw to the side of the building, still screaming, Ningxi came back to her senses, and couldn't help but shake her head. She suddenly remembered that the person was crazy about an esports game, and these figurines seemed to be the mainstream characters in that game. Even the lines of the characters were exactly the same. If others were to find out that the existence that caused most of the underground world to tremble in fear actually had such a cute side, who knew what they would think? After the cartoon figurine finished speaking, the room fell into dead silence again. Ningxi curled her lips and slowly walked forward, ready to pick up the cartoon figurine. Later, if that person saw how she treated her beloved figurine, the consequences. Ningxi shivered, not daring to think too deeply about it. Just as she was about to take the figurine back, Ningxi's eyes inadvertently swept downstairs, and found that the handle of the inner door was slowly turning. Ningxi's face lit up, but in a few seconds, the smile froze on her face, and quickly disappeared. Originally, she thought that the person she was waiting for had returned, but upon closer inspection, that wasn't the case. The doorknob kept turning, not like the owner returning home, but more like a robber visiting. In a place like St. Bernardine, there were groups of robbers. So much so that it was common to brazenly rob and murder in broad daylight. Especially a place like this where a high-ranking person lived, it became a target for those desperados. She did not hesitate and immediately returned to the house. She placed the figurine back on the table and opened the drawer. Sure enough, it's still the same. She muttered to herself, her eyes falling on a pitch-black pistol lying quietly in the drawer. German PPQ, it's really that person's style. She took out her pistol and quickly loaded 10 bullets. In this city, most of the desperate bandits carried guns. No matter how good they were, no matter how fast they were, they couldn't outrun a gun. After 10 bullets were loaded, there was a squeaking sound. She frowned and looked downstairs. Right below, 6 men in black slowly walked into the house. Their footsteps were extremely light. Whether it was the way they held their guns or their posture, they seemed to have received professional training. They weren't as simple as ordinary robbers who broke into houses to rob. Are they not bandits? She looked even more confused. If they were bandits, would they need to make such a big fuss? 6 people with 6 guns. Looking at their clothes, they were also very standard. How could there be such well-trained bandits wearing expensive clothes? Chapter 470. In a place like St. Bernardine, how could there be a well-trained bandit team dressed in expensive clothing? Regardless of whether others believed it or not, she definitely wouldn't. The 6 men in black with guns in their hands kept making all sorts of professional hand gestures. Their eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as they scanned the entire floor. Soon, the 6 men had searched the first floor. They probably didn't find what they were looking for. Then, the man in the lead raised his index finger and gently beckoned in the direction of the second floor. Seeing this, the 5 men in black behind him nodded and followed behind the man in the lead. They walked slowly towards the second floor, as if they were afraid of disturbing the owner of the building. However, these people didn't know that ever since they came in, their every move had been observed by a certain woman. At this moment, she had completely understood that these 6 well-trained black-clothed men were definitely not ordinary thieves. If she guessed correctly, they should be that person's enemies. Now they came to seek revenge on her, not for money, not for sex, obviously to take her life. However, this scene was really melodramatic. That person wasn't at home, so she was the innocent victim. Damn it, why is it like this every time? She gritted her teeth. She had encountered similar situations twice in the past. Including today, it was the 3rd time. That person's enemies were really all over the world. For that person, seeking revenge seemed to be something that he had to experience a few times every once in a while. She returned to the house, her mind racing. Then, she quickly picked up an exquisite cartoon figurine from the table. After activating the switch, she threw it downstairs. The man in black almost instinctively pulled the trigger of his pistol. As the man in black pulled the trigger, a sound like a mosquito's whisper spread. The lower half of the cartoon figurine was smashed into pieces. With a bang, the remaining half of the cartoon figurine fell in the middle of the men in black. "Oh, that shot of yours hurt my feelings." The cartoon figurine's voice rang out. The men in black were suspicious as they stared at the cartoon figurine that had been smashed in half. At this moment, the cartoon figurine was still chattering. "Bro, did you grow up in a crematorium that sells barbecue? This will be a massacre. How about a magic trick first?" Damn it. The man in the lead frowned, then stomped on the cartoon figurine that kept repeating the game's lines into pieces. At the same time, Ningxi's figure flashed past, drawing an arc in the void. Ningxi's gaze was as sharp as ice. The current her, whether it was her state or her expression, seemed to have become another person. If someone who was very familiar with Ningxi was present, he would be surprised. At this moment, Ningxi was just like her a few years ago. There was no fear or complex emotion in her cold eyes, only precise calculation. Bang! As the first spark emerged from the black muzzle of Ningxi's hand, a deep and loud sound spread throughout the building, followed by the miserable cry of the man in the lead. The man in the lead was short of breath. He staggered backward to counterattack. After a few breaths, he collapsed to the ground like mud. Ningxi's spear had hit him right in the heart. Seeing this, the other 5 men in black were horrified. They didn't care about their leader who was shot and scattered to find cover. However, at that moment, 3 more muffled gunshots were heard. Chapter 471. Before the 5 men in black could find cover, Ning Shi, who was on the 2nd floor, pulled the trigger 3 times in a row. Bang! 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 As the gunshots rang out, as if to prove something, at the same time, the 3 men in black downstairs collapsed to the ground, their blood staining the floor bright red. Outside the house, many local residents quickly closed their doors and windows. If something like this happened anywhere else, it would cause panic. However, it was different here. This was St. Bernardine, so people were used to it. As for St. Bernardine, the most obvious and memorable label would probably be crime. At this time, there were only 2 men in black left in the building, and they each found a place to cover. The 2 men gradually calmed down from the initial panic. After all, they were well-trained killers. Even if they lost the last one, they wouldn't act like headless flies. Ning Shi took the opportunity to shoot several times and temporarily chose to hide in the room. Phew, they still haven't come back. Ning Shi took a deep breath. She had been away from this dark underground circle for a long time, and suddenly faced it again. She was really not used to it for a while. Fortunately, her actions just now were all within her meticulous calculations, and she had successfully gotten rid of the 4 of them. To put it bluntly, Ning Shi knew in her heart that it was all thanks to the exquisite cartoon figures. Otherwise, she might not have been able to detect the well-trained killers breaking in. Once that happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. Now, there were only 2 killers left, and it was not too difficult for Ning Shi to deal with them. Soon, Ning Shi found the main switch of the electric board that controlled the whole floor and chose to turn it off. In an instant, the room was dark, like the darkest corner of the night, and the whole world seemed to fall into a dead silence, without any sound. The 2 men in black downstairs were also very cautious. They did not choose to act immediately, but quietly waited for the opportunity. As early as a few days ago, when they received this assassination mission, they were already prepared to be wiped out. After all, the target of the assassination mission was too famous in their circle. However, the temptation of money made them dizzy. It could be said that they knew there was a tiger in the mountain, but they still went to the tiger's mountain. At this moment, regret was useless. He had already been discovered by that person, and the probability of escaping from that person's hands was almost 0. Right now, he could only fight with his life on the line. Perhaps only then would he have a glimmer of hope for survival. Cold sweat had already soaked the bodies of the 2 black-clothed men, but they didn't show the slightest bit of anxiety or fear. Trained professional assassins had always been like this. Every day, they wandered around the edge of the Holy Land, licking blood from the edge of their blades, carrying their heads to do business. Today's situation wasn't something that had never happened before. Ning Shi, who was on the 2nd floor, didn't act rashly. She had been lucky before, so she had succeeded. The other 2 killers had been on guard. After a while, Ning Shi once again picked up the exquisite cartoon figurine on the table, turned it on and threw it downstairs. Needless to say, that person's cartoon figurines seemed to be custom-made. The quality was very good. Even if it was thrown from the 2nd floor, it wouldn't break easily. Ahahaha. I think you're a big woman. Suddenly, the dead silence was broken by an abrupt sound. The mocking laughter of the cartoon figurines echoed throughout the building. Chapter 472. Ahahaha, I think you're all aunties. You're really made of glass, shattering with one touch. As the cartoon figurines' mocking laughter rang out, the 2 assassins in black instinctively froze, but they resisted the urge to make a move. Idiots, even God doesn't dare to step into this place, yet you're here to die. The cartoon figurine's voice was sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes low growls, and sometimes bright and clear. As long as it's 998, you'll feel so good you can't breathe. Weird, I really want to shoot something. I have 2 guns, one is called shoot, the other is called... Ah, what's flowing out? The cartoon figurine's lines rang out continuously, and Ning Shi's mouth twitched slightly on the 2nd floor. Although these lines were indeed from the esports game that the person played, when they were connected or heard individually, it felt a little weird. Weird. After the cartoon figurine's incessant chatter for a few minutes, one of the assassins in black couldn't take it anymore. The toy's screams were so loud that he couldn't focus and think of an effective strategy. The man in black wanted to signal to the other man, but it was pitch black in the building. Other than the cartoon figurine that emitted a faint glow, there was no one or anything that could be seen with the naked eye. Damn it, I should have brought the night vision goggles, the man in black cursed in his heart. Then, he carefully extended his right arm, intending to shoot at the cartoon figurine. Bang! The dull sound of gunfire rang out again, followed by the man's scream. He didn't have time to shoot. This shot came from the second floor, accurately hitting his right palm. Their screams are so weird. The cartoon figurine's lines continued. Ning Shi, who was on the second floor, had the night vision goggles she found in the building. She had to admit that the person was well equipped. Other than the lack of heavy weapons, he had everything. At that moment, the man in black fell to the ground, his body sliding halfway out. Ning Shi, who was wearing the night vision goggles, had no resistance to night vision. Invisible acting is the deadliest. Following the cartoon figurine's lines, Ning Shi fired another accurate shot, directly finishing off the man in black who was howling miserably. The screams stopped abruptly. "And you, young man, do you need a few rounds?" The cartoon figurine's direction was towards the last assassin in black, as if its words were directed at him. "Oh, my big saber has been thirsty for a long time." The last assassin in black had a fierce look in his eyes. He raised his pistol and fired several bullets toward the second floor. However, without night vision goggles, it was just a blind shot. It was almost no threat to Ning Shi. "Your marksmanship isn't bad, but if you want to hit her, you'll have to wait for the next time." The cartoon figurine coincidentally used a powerful taunt. "You remind me of the best cow in my hometown. I want to introduce that cow to you." Damn it, he's toying with me. The last assassin's face finally showed anger. Anger and fear made him lose his mind, and he fired a few more shots toward the second floor. But this time, Ning Shi was well prepared. Just as the assassin in black predicted her position and shot, Ning Shi saw the best time and pulled the trigger of the pistol. Someone as handsome as me is usually the main character in other games. Following the cartoon figurine's last line, the assassin in black fell to the ground with a thud, dead. Chapter 473. Ning Shi didn't turn on the lights. She didn't know if these killers had reinforcements. Wearing night vision goggles, she cautiously walked down from the second floor. He walked to the side of the assassins who had died long ago and searched their bodies for items that contained information about their identities. B-level. Ning Shi was slightly stunned. These people were actually B-level original sin killers. The so-called original sin could be traced back to the end of the Middle Ages. It was the most credible and influential killer list in the world. Especially when the last war broke out between countries, the existence of original sin was pushed to the peak. Not only was it the largest family force, but even some small countries chose to hire the top killers of original sin at that time. Existence is original sin. Original sin should be extinguished. The world is full of original sin. The fire of desire can't bear the humiliation, clenching teeth stubbornly when the power of original sin is used to destroy the whole world. This sentence was once known as the most sacred Bible of original sin. The so-called B-level killers belonged to the lower middle level of original sin, and above B-level were A-level killers. Hiring a B-level killer to kill that person. Ning Shi shook her head. It was simply suicide. Original Sins wasn't an assassin organization, nor was it an organization with a complete system. It was just a ranking list, and almost all the world-class assassins were on the Original Sins ranking list. Only through the Original Sins ranking list would one be able to hire top-notch assassins. For example, these B-level killers only belonged to a sub-ranking of Original Sin and didn't even have the qualifications to be on the Original Sin list. That was why Ning Shi was puzzled. Who on earth would hire an assassin on the B-level ordinary list to kill that person? Someone as handsome as me is usually the main character in other games. At this time, the cartoon character figurine that Ningxi had thrown on the first floor was giving a thumbs up, revealing its white canine teeth and laughing. Ningxi smiled and picked up the cartoon character figurine. You really are my lucky charm. Thank you this time. I'm handsome. Ningxi, well, I didn't see it. It's time to show my real skills. Ningxi, are you blind? Didn't you just show it? Young man, we have to finish quickly. I still have some treasures to dig. Ningxi, finally, Ningxi used her index finger to turn off the button of the cartoon character. Only then did the talkative cartoon character stop chattering. Before Ningxi could do anything, the sound of irregular footsteps came from outside the house. At that moment, Ningxi quickly hid by the window and observed the situation outside. He saw several foreign men pacing outside the door, looking into the building from time to time, as if they were waiting for something. These people weren't assassins on the deadly sins ranking list. Just by listening to their irregular footsteps, it was easy to tell that they were. Suddenly, the cell phone of the leader, who had been dead for a long time, rang in his pocket. Ningxi quickly stepped forward and took out her phone. It was a message from Jeffrey. The content of the message was, "Did you succeed?" Ningxi pondered for a moment, then used the man's phone to reply, "Done, but this time we almost died." A moment later, the phone rang again. "Haha, thank you for your hard work. As for the reward, I will give you more. Now, I will ask my men to retreat first. They still have things to do." Chapter 474. Ningxi turned off her phone, deep in thought. Those people outside should be the subordinates that Jeffrey mentioned. Seeing that they had left, Ningxi pondered for a long time and finally decided to leave the house and follow them. She did not know when the person she was waiting for would return, so she might as well follow them and see who this so-called Jeffrey was. He actually dared to hire a B-grade assassin to assassinate that person. Soon, Ningxi packed up, brought the lucky item figurine, and quietly followed behind the foreigners. About half an hour later, Ningxi followed them to a relatively remote villa. There were a few men guarding the villa. "Is that Jeffrey the owner of this villa?" Ningxi muttered to herself. If this was really the headquarters, she should not act rashly. Just as Ningxi was about to leave, a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s was pushed out of the villa by a few people and roughly pushed to the ground. You bastards, this place is my home. You can't chase me out." "Absolutely not." The middle-aged man roared angrily, his eyes burning. "Hey, who do you think you are now? Maybe you won't be able to see tomorrow morning's sunshine, you idiot." "Oh, my dear Luo Fu, the weather has been gloomy and rainy for the past few days. There's no sunshine at all. Idiot, I'm just being funny. You don't understand my humor. Get out of my house, right now." The middle-aged man struggled to get up, pointed at those people, and shouted angrily, "You rotten old man, get out of here." One of the young men slapped the middle-aged man's right cheek. With a crisp sound, the middle-aged man was slapped to the ground. "I'll kick you to death, you old fart." The young men took turns to kick the middle-aged man, and used all sorts of vicious words to insult him. At this time, Ningxi had already snuck into the villa. In the end, she found out that this was just an ordinary villa, not the headquarters of Jeffrey that she had imagined. She did not find Jeffrey in the villa either. After searching, Ningxi directly left the villa through the main entrance. "Old thing, I'm going to take your head today. Do you think you can still keep your life? Ha ha ha. Boss has already said to take your dog's life. Luo Fu, where's his dog? Let me handle it. Bastard, did you watch too many porn movies? Are you looking for trouble?" The young man named Luo Fu scolded jokingly. Ha ha ha. At this moment, they inadvertently glanced at the villa and saw a woman slowly walking out of the villa. Seeing this, Love and the others were confused. "Who is this woman? Why is she in the villa?" "You. Little girl. That's right, I'm talking about you. Stop looking around and look at me." Love stopped punching and kicking the middle-aged man and blocked Ningxi's way. Ningxi stood there expressionlessly. "Who are you? Why did you walk out of the villa?" Luo Fu looked Ningxi up and down. Looking at Ningxi's exquisite and beautiful face, he smiled meaningfully. Is this your home? Ningxi didn't answer but asked. What did you say? Hearing Ningxi's words, Love's expression changed. No one had ever dared to speak to him in such a tone. Little girl, I'm Love, the younger brother of the new boss of Solomon, Jeffrey. Do you know who I am? If you don't, I can tell you. And I'm going to sleep with you today, Love said fiercely. Chapter 475. Ningxi was taken aback by the young man's words. This man was the younger brother of Jeffrey. Love was displeased. As soon as he finished his words, the woman's arm flashed and hit his face with her elbow. What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly. Ningxi stared at the wailing Love and asked calmly. You bitch. How dare you hit me? Love clutched his swollen face and glared at Ningxi fiercely. He yelled at the people behind him, Beat her to death. I'm going to sleep with her tonight. Hearing Love's yell, the people finally came to their senses. Ningxi's beautiful elbow strike had knocked the sturdy Love to the ground. They were stunned for a moment. Love, are you going to beat her to death or sleep with her? Can she still sleep if she's beaten to death? One of the bald, brawny men asked subconsciously. Fuck you, buddy. Get her. Love cursed. As soon as Love's voice fell, the brawny bald, buddy, and the others quickly surrounded Ningxi. Wait. Ningxi shook her head. Chick, are you begging for mercy? The brawny bald, buddy yelled coldly. Ningxi strode forward and fetched a few iron rods from the side. She distributed the iron rods to the people one by one. Ningxi's actions caused these people to look at each other in dismay. They seemed to find it hard to understand. Okay, you can come now. Ningxi clapped her hands and nodded with satisfaction. It was boring to play with them if they were too weak. This was much better. Fuck, I think you're tired of living. Bitch, how dare you look down on us? Do you want to die? In the eyes of the people, Ningxi's action was an absolute provocation and disdain. As outstanding members of Solomon, how could they stand it? Of course, they were the ones who gave themselves the title of outstanding member. With the brawny bald man in the lead, the people held the iron rods and slashed at Ningxi from top to bottom. Slow down. I'm going to sleep with her tonight. Don't cripple her, or it will affect my character. Also, don't hit her face. Love yelled as he guarded the middle-aged man. However, a few breaths later, Buddy, who was the leader of the group, was sent flying by Ningxi's kick. He fell hard next to Love as he wailed in pain. It was like a chain reaction. 1, 2, 3, 4. It didn't take long for those people to be beaten back by Ningxi. The iron rods that Ningxi had given them before also flew out of their hands and fell to the ground. Fuck. Where did this woman come from? She's too powerful. The bald man's face was full of horror. Hit him. Buddy, shoot her. Love finally realized something was wrong and asked Buddy to take out his gun. Their team was only given one gun, and the only gun was with their captain, Buddy. Although Love was Jeffrey's younger brother, he did not have any special rights in this regard. Hearing that, Buddy immediately took out a pistol from his waist and aimed it at Ningxi. Ningxi's expression remained unchanged as the black muzzle was pointed at her. Her right hand was already gripping the handle of the gun. She was confident that she could kill the brawny bald man the moment he opened fire. Shoot her, Buddy, you idiot. Love yelled angrily when the brawny bald man didn't shoot. At this moment, the brawny bald man was embarrassed. He chuckled. I'm doomed this time. Every time I go out, I'm afraid that my gun will be snatched away during a fight. That's why I never load bullets. Luo Fu and the others were completely dumbfounded by his words, and Ningxi almost burst into laughter. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.